In the opening scene, we see a group of mercenaries who have been shot and killed by a mystery person. The scene cuts to show Andy, a mercenary who is known as the Old Guard. Her teammate named Booker rides to meet with her, and they both head to meet with the rest of their team at a hotel. When they arrive, they are greeted by the rest of the team members, Joe and Nikki. The mercenaries begin to discuss a mission that was proposed by an FBI agent that they have worked with before. Andy feels uneasy working with clients twice, but her team convinces her that it is for the greater good. The next day, Andy and Booker goes to meet up with Copley, a CIA agent who wants to stage a rescue operation to save children trapped by terrorists. Nikki and Joe is also stationed in a building to ensure nothing goes wrong. They agree and advise him that they will send him the necessary information after they have staged the rescue, and they leave. The following day, the team gets on a helicopter and head to the location where the children are being held captive. They make their way through the village and wait for nightfall to make their move. They arrive at the location and take out a guard on watch and go through the fence. Once they get inside, they take out the men that are on watch and search the building for the children. They get to the room where the children were shown to be held but realize that no one is there. Surprisingly, they are ambushed by a group of men that were waiting for them. The team was showered with bullets by the men and they all fell to the ground dead. As the men continue to search the room, miraculously the mercenaries started to come back from the dead as their wounds heal and the bullets fall from their body. They stood up to face the men, who were stunned to see them still alive, and they took them all out with ease. At this point, the mercenaries realized that they were set up and it was just a plot to uncover their secret. The mercenaries are a group of people who cannot die and have been living for hundreds of years, fighting in wars for the greater good. But people have tried to kill and torture them, thinking that they are evil because of this power. The team leaves the building and goes to a secret location to bury their gear so no one can track them. Andy gets upset and complains that this is the same reason why she wanted to stop fighting for people and why she doesn't work for clients twice. They then decided to leave the area and go into hiding. The scene cuts to Afghanistan, where soldiers are invading a village to find a terrorist in hiding. Niall, who is a Marine soldier, heads to the village to assist in finding the fugitive. She convinces the women to let her in to search for the man and sees him trying to escape. Niall is trying to restrain him and aid his wound, but while she is distracted, the terrorist cuts her neck. Her teammate calls out for help and tries to stop the bleeding before she becomes unconscious. We skip to Andy, who is on a train with her team heading to their hideout. She falls asleep and they all begin to see visions of Niall, who was hurt by the terrorist, and Niall also starts to see the faces of the mercenaries and regains consciousness in the camp. Everyone on the train wakes up and realizes that they have seen the vision of someone else who now possesses the same powers. They decide that they have to go and rescue her because people will realize her abilities and try to torture her as well. Andy decides to take the mission to retrieve her and tell the men to get to their hideout. Back at the soldier camp, persons start to question why Niall didn't die since her wound should have killed her. Her squad mates go to see her and ask about her wound, but they realize that there's no wound on her neck, which even Niall finds odd. Niall brushes off the conversation and goes out to take a walk. Merrick, who is the owner of a company named Big Pharma, is making a presentation on a drug that will make people live longer. It is also revealed that Copley, who double-crossed the mercenary, works for him. Their aim was to discover if the mercenaries truly had these abilities, because they want to experiment on them to create their miracle drug. Niall, who is at the camp, still feels troubled because of what happened the day before. Her sergeant approaches her and tells her she will go to Germany for them to run tests on her, but she tells him she is fine. He tells her to pack her bags and gives her the dog tags which they took, showing that she actually died and came back to life. Niall goes to get her things and everyone stares at her awkwardly, so she leaves. Andy secretly arrives at the camp and knocks Niall unconscious, carrying her away in a jeep. They are in the middle of the desert when Niall regains consciousness and escapes from the jeep. Andy stops and Niall begins to run away, but Andy shoots her in the head. Niall comes back to life and stabs Andy, but is shocked to see it doesn't affect her. Niles asks of her identity and she tells her she is a part of a team of mercenaries who cannot die, and if she wants more answers she must willingly follow, and she agrees. They get to an airplane, where Niall suspects that it's owned by a drug dealer and judges Andy's character, but she brushes it off. Andy goes outside to find out about Copley's whereabouts from Booker, but he hasn't been able to find any details. She tells him that she found Niall and they will arrive soon, then she destroys the phone so they can't be tracked. The plane takes off and Niall asks why this is happening to her. Andy expresses that she doesn't know and that she has been like this for hundreds of years. Niall asks about her teammates, which Andy tells her it's only 4 of them. Niall begins to doubt her decisions and restrains Andy while holding the pilot at gunpoint. She wants them to turn back, but Andy tells the pilot to play dead in Russian, which Niall doesn't understand. She pretends to shoot the pilot and he plays dead, which causes Niall to freak out thinking they will crash. Andy tells her they can jump to survive, but Niall is against the idea. She forces Niall to untie her, saying she knows how to fly a plane, but it was simply a trick for Andy to get free. Once free, Niall realizes she has been tricked when the pilot continues flying and begins to fight with Andy. Throughout the brawl, Niall's arms and legs get broken but healed instantly, which she still can't comprehend. They make amends and continue to the secret hideout. They arrive at the hideout and are having dinner with the rest of the team. She asks what they fight for and they tell her they only fight for the good of the people. They have not found another person with their abilities in 200 years since Booker came along, which means everyone else is more than 200 years old, with Andy being the oldest. Andy tells Niall that they are immortal, but they will die once the ability goes away, as a former mercenary died from his injury. Niall is stunned by the news of this, so Nikki tells her to get some rest. Later that night, Niall begins to have a dream where she sees a woman drowning underwater. The mercenaries reveal to her that it is a former mercenary named Quinn that is locked in an iron coffin under the sea, who was friends with Andy. They were accused of witchcraft and sent to be hanged continuously, but they couldn't die. The people decided that they were too powerful together and locked Quinn in an iron coffin, which they threw into the sea. Even now she is there at the bottom of the sea, dying over and over again, but they don't know where the location is. They spent decades looking for Quinn, while Andy feels guilty, blaming herself for what happened. This information overwhelms Niall and she steps outside for fresh air. Andy comes to speak with her and Niall tells her she doesn't want this life, but Andy reassures her that they will keep her safe. At the same time, they hear shots being fired in the building, which signals that Copley's men have found them. They head in to see Booker wounded and Joe and Nikki missing. Andy stays with Booker while Niall goes to look for Joe and Nikki. Booker regains consciousness and starts to heal, and Niall comes back to report that they have been taken by the men. Andy knows that they will return for the rest of them, so she devises a plan and tells Niall to wait for her signal. She heads out to face the men who have re-entered the building, taking them out easily. Andy initiates the signal and they head out of the building, taking a car to make their escape. We skip to Joe and Nikki, who have been taken hostage by the men to be brought to Merrick's lab for testing. They arrive at a plane where Copley is waiting for them. The rest of the team goes to an abandoned mine where Andy keeps the things she has collected over hundreds of years. They start to plan and strategize how they will rescue Joe and Nikki. At Merrick's lab, we see both of them arrive and meet Merrick, who gets a little too close and gets hit in the face. He collects himself and gets a knife which he used to stab Joe with to see if their abilities are true. They see Joe beginning to heal, which fills them with excitement, while Copley seems to be regretting his decision. Merrick tells them he wants to experiment on them and use cells from their body to create a regenerative drug that people will love and make his business famous. They make the men unconscious and bring them to the lab for testing, but Copley begins to protest that it should be for science and saving people and not profits, which Merrick brushes off. The team in the mines is continuing to develop their plan while Niall continues to test her new ability. While Andy steps out, Niles asks Booker about Andy's age, but he tells her that she doesn't remember since it's been so long and she had no one she could confide in. He tells Niles how he had a son in the past, but he got sick and died, as he could do nothing to help him even with his abilities, expressing that everyone around you gets sick or become old and die, but you are immortal and will have to live through that over and over again. Andy went to the store to get supplies for her wound, as it appears to not be healing anymore, as her ability is fading. She thanks the store owner for helping her and heads back to the mines. At the lab, Copley is asking Merrick how long the testing will take. He tells him that they won't stop until they are able to get the drug he wants to produce. He explains that he doesn't have the intention of letting them go, so his competitors can get them. No matter how long it takes, he will do what he must. Joe and Nikki are on the operating table where cells are being extracted from them. Despite this, they snicker and joke over their past adventures. In the mines, Niall is awoken by a nightmare, runs outside and sees Andy leaning on the car with her phone. Niall shares stories of her family and the life she had with them as they all fought in the army. Andy says she doesn't remember what her family looked like because it has been so long. She misses Quinn and regrets breaking the promise she made to her, but she won't let that happen again, as she will do whatever it takes to get back Joe and Nikki. Booker comes at the very moment and tells them he found the address of Copley, and they head out to find him. They head to the address and go in with arms to face him. Niall doesn't want to take part in it as she is traumatized from deaths in Afghanistan and how Andy killed all the men. Andy still reassures her and gives her a gun in case she changes her mind. Niall takes the car and leaves in hopes of going home, but she checks the gun clip and realizes it's empty, so she has nothing to defend herself with, forcing her to go back to Andy. Andy and Booker enter Copley's house and holds him at gunpoint, but in a twist of events, Booker shoots her. He restrains her, and it is revealed that Booker had set up bringing the team together so all of them can be experimented on, so they can do for others what he couldn't do for his son. Copley talks to Andy to convince her it's for a good cause of saving humanity, but soon they realize that Andy is not healing. Merrick enters with his men and restrain Booker. He questions why Andy is not healing, and Copley tells him her abilities seem to be fading. They inject both of them to make them unconscious, but Copley protests against experimenting on her as she is not immortal anymore and wouldn't survive testing. He brushes him off, and he's knocked unconscious while they leave with the two mercenaries. They are brought to the lab and Joe asks what's wrong with Andy, which Booker tells them that she is not healing and she will probably die because of him. Merrick tells them to keep her alive, but Nikki tells him that all things must die and they only haven't died because it's not their time. But Merrick threatens that he will still do whatever he must if there's hope for a regenerative drug, and he leaves. Back at Copley's house, Niall arrives back to look for Andy and Booker and holds him at gunpoint. She reveals to him that she is also a mercenary, and he tells her they are in a lab being tested and tortured for their immortality. Copley shows Andy's history of all the things she has done for humanity, and how her future generation also saved multiple people as a result of her existence. Niall couldn't believe he gave them up after the good things they have done, but Copley explains he wanted other people to be saved as his wife died from cancer, and there was nothing to cure her. He tells Niall that she has lost her immortality, as she won't stop bleeding, so he brings her to their location. They arrive there and Niall prepares herself to fight the men and tells Copley to retreat. She heads upstairs and sees a group of men that fire at her, but she regains consciousness and takes them out. While in the lab, Joe and Nikki are angry with Booker for selling them out to be experimented on. Niall faces Merrick and more men that comes to his aid. The guards realize that she is also a mercenary and all of them begin to go after her. She heads into the lab and tackles the scientist, and then she cut loose the rest of the mercenaries so they can face the incoming threat. They leave the laboratory and get into a hallway where guards are lined up waiting for them. The guards are being taken down while they are also trying to shield Andy from gunshots. The team is making their way through the building to get to Merrick but get blasted by a guard. They regain consciousness and begin to fight with the guards, and Andy runs away to go find Merrick. On her way, she encounters a guard and blocks his bullet, taking him down easily. The team gathers and they question the guard on Merrick's whereabouts, and they split up to go find him. In another room, Merrick is holding an axe while the guards are set at the door waiting for the mercenaries to arrive. Niall decides to make the entry since Andy isn't immortal and tells her to wear a bulletproof jacket. Joe enters through a window, throwing the guards off focus while Niall and Andy infiltrates through the door. They manage to take out the guards and continue to search for Merrick, but Nikki realizes that he is in the elevator and tells the team. Niall decides to stay with Andy in the room since she is hurt, but it turns out Merrick remained in the room and used the elevator as a distraction. He comes out holding Andy at gunpoint, but Niall pretends to shoot at her as a distraction while Andy goes after him with the axe. He tries to shoot Andy, but Niall comes and stops him, jumping out the window with Merrick, and he dies on impact. Niall begins to heal and regain consciousness as the team comes to meet up with her. They manage to get her out of the car and they leave the scene before police arrives. The scene cuts to the team, who are at a bar without Booker. Niall goes to see him outside and tells him that they are deciding whether they should keep him a part of the team or not. She tells him that Copley will make it look like she was killed in action so her family will mourn and forget about her. Booker assures her that she will do great with the team and that they will have her back. After Niall leaves, Andy comes and tells Booker he will be banned from the team for 100 years, then he will be able to join again. Booker accepts the punishment and bids farewell to Andy. The team leaves together and goes to see Copley, who shows them all the good things they have done, to let them know this might be the reason they possess their abilities. Andy agrees that they do have purpose and entrusts Copley with helping them to do more good for humanity. The movie closes and 6 months later, we see a drunk Booker who goes home to see a mysterious woman who tells him it's been a long time since she's seen him, which could mean that she is another mercenary. Like and subscribe for more movie recaps. Thank you for watching.